and welcome to a brand new episode of Brewing with 50 Bucks. This is Stefan coming to you from the General Warfare headquarters. So, last week was a little bit of a different turn in terms of content for me in general. It's a little bit of an exploration about where I come from, my history and everything. I took a little bit of a break last week in terms of Magic content, but there was one important factor I missed. Strixhaven came out that week, and I'm assuming everyone has already started picking up their cards. Everyone started picking up the Commander 2021 product and everything. I just took a week off for my own personal health and just, in terms of Magic content, but nonetheless, I am back at it with a brand new episode. And we're going to be exploring one of the new commanders from Strixhaven. This is actually another one of my favorite commanders to come out of Strixhaven. If you haven't seen my commander overview, it's going to be in the top right-hand corner of your screen, so go check it out after this video, of course, and we'll get into it. So our commander of today is Shadrix Silverquill. This is a neat little card I thought was really cool upon release, giving multiple options for you to gain advantage by either drawing cards, getting yourself some tokens, or putting +1/+1 counters on your stuff. Anyways, we're gonna break down this commander. So Shadrix Silverquill is a 2/5 for 3 in Orzhov, so 3 white and black for a legendary Elder Dragon with flying and double strike. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. The first is target player creates a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. The second, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. And the third, a target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control. So Shadrix gives you quite a bit of versatility when it comes to your combat, whether you're creating tokens, you're drawing cards, or you're putting counters on each creature. Now, the strategy of this deck is to draw a lot of cards with Shadrix. The reason why? There is a combo in this deck. However, not only that, but you want to sift through as much of your deck as you possibly can, and being able to swing at least for 2. 2 may not be strong, but the ability to have you draw a card, especially when you're constantly beating your opponents, you're constantly getting that card draw, which means you get to look through more of your deck. However, the majority of the deck is on equipments and this one combo, so you're focusing on one of 2 strategies here. What are those strategies? We'll get to it in the deck breakdown. And as always, the challenge of this deck is to build around a $50 budget range. The budget includes the price of the commander, yet excludes the price of basic lands. This is the limitations we set on these decks, and we can only go over the budget or around $5. That still is in budget consideration. Anything over $5 and we are officially over our budget. Now this deck consists of 11 smaller categories, so we will get into it first with our combo. This is the game-winning combo that we are trying to get to in this deck. It is a 3-card combo. The first is Sun Titan. So Sun Titan is a 6/6 for 4 white with Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. The next is the second part of the combo, which is Kaya's Ghost Form. You enchant a creature or planeswalker you control. When that enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. As you'll notice with Sun Titan, anytime he enters the battlefield, you return a permanent card with mana value 3 or less. Kaya's Ghost Form is 1 mana, and anytime the enchanted creature Kaya's Ghost Form is dies, you return it to the battlefield. So, we need a sacrifice outlet, and we are running 2. The first is Altar of Dementia, where you sacrifice a creature and target player puts a number of cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power from the top of their library into the graveyard. So, with this, if you're milling your opponents out for all their deck. And the second one is Blasting Station, where you tap it and sacrifice a creature. It deals 1 damage to target creature or player. And the most important part of this card, whenever a creature comes into play, you may untap Blasting Station. So anytime Sun Titan enters the battlefield, Kaya's Ghost Form is going to be re-equipped onto it. You get to tap the Blasting Station, sacrifice the Sun Titan to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. And with Kaya's Ghost Form, Sun Titan comes back into play, Kaya's Ghost Form reattaches, and Blasting Station untaps. So, as you can tell, this is a 4-card combo. Well, technically 3, but we're having 4 cards The only thing is, this is a bit of a glass cannon combo. The other cards that would allow this to go infinite are much more expensive for this brew, so we are running with 4 cards for this combo. That being said, how do we get this combo? How do we turn this on? So we're gonna go right into our tutors. So the first of which is Diabolic Tutor. This is probably one of the most common tutors you'll find in budget. Not only that, but this is one of the most common tutors you'll find that is not overly expensive. You get to search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. The next is Final Parting. With this, you get to search your library for 2 cards, put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. So you get to effectively tutor for both your combo pieces, no matter what it be, where you can put Gaia's Ghost form in the graveyard and get the last remaining combo piece you need for the combo to go off. Mastermind's Acquisition. This is 2 red, black, and you get to choose either to tutor for a card, or you get to choose a card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand. Effectively, you're only going to use this for the first ability to tutor, but nonetheless, these are their tutors. And our final one is Razaketh's Right, where you get to search your library for a card and then put that card into your hand and then shuffle your library. But with this one, it has a cycling of black. So if you don't need Razaketh's Right, if you have your combo pieces, you could dip this away and draw an extra card that we can go through. So in the event that we don't have our tutors, how else can we get to our combo pieces? Well, we have our draw category here, and we're gonna start off strong with 2 cards that do the exact same thing. We're gonna start off with Dusk Legion Zealot and Phyrexian Rager. Both of them enter the battlefield and you draw a card and lose 1 life. Admittedly, Phyrexian Rager is 1 more mana for a 2/2, whereas Dusk Legion Zealot is a 1/1, but they do the exact same thing. Whenever they enter the battlefield, you draw an extra card. Next is Plumb the Forbidden. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures, and when you do, you get to copy it for each creature you sacrifice this way. You draw a card and you lose 1 life. So if you have multiple creatures, or if you even decide to put a lot of tokens on your side, like the Inkling tokens, you get to use them as fodder to draw more cards at the low cost of your life total. Next, we have Read the Bones, where you get to scry 2, then draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life for 3 mana. It's effectively a pretty solid card. You get to look at the top 2 cards of your library, decide if you want them, either keep them on top or put them at the bottom. You draw 2 cards and you lose those 2 life. Next, we have Secret Rendezvous, which you and target opponent each draw 3 cards. This is one of the new cards from Strixhaven that I really like, because white really needs some card draw. Admittedly, your opponent is also drawing some extra cards, but for the most part, this is just white's card draw. Next, we have Sign in Blood, 2 black, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. What more can you ask for? It's a solid staple card in black. And last is Underworld Connections, where you get to enchant a land, and then when you tap that land, it has the ability to pay 1 life and draw an extra card. So even your lands can tap and draw you some extra value on top of it. Now, I mentioned value, but what kind of value could we be running in this deck? Well, we start off with Citadel Siege, where with this, you most likely are going to be choosing the cons section, where at the beginning of your combat on your turn, you put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. You're basically suiting up Shadrix just to hit for a little bit harder. Even so, every turn he gets 2+1/+1 counters. He's a little bit harder to kill, especially too, since he'll become a 7 power, 9 power, 11 power after all of that. But for the most part, you could be doing that. Or you can also do dragons, where you get to tap a creature down that opponent controls to get in with Shadrix damage. Next, we have Combat Calligrapher. Inklings can attack you or planeswalkers you control. And whenever a player attacks you or your opponents, that attacking player creates a tapped 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying that's attacking that opponent. So admittedly, you can just give your opponents the Inkling tokens, but they can't attack you as long as Combat Calligrapher is on the field. And they get rewarded for attacking your opponents because they get more Inkling tokens. Next, we're running Command the Dreadhorde. This is a fun little game ender, which I admittedly love. It is a burden to cast this. It's 6 mana, and you get to put as many creatures from your opponents onto your side at the cost of their total converted mana costs. However, you could be getting some very big bombastic creatures on your side of the field to strengthen your numbers, 1 and 2 gets your combo pieces up and running too. You can even be getting those. Next, we're running Cunning Rhetoric, where whenever an opponent attacks you or one of your planeswalkers, admittedly we're not running any in this deck, you may exile the top card of that player's library, and you can play that card as long as it remains in exile, and you may spend mana as though if it were mana of any color to cast it. With black, you basically get to steal a card from the top of your opponent's library. As long as they're attacking you, they exile the top card and you can steal it from them. Next, we're running Dark Ritual. Simple card, black, instant, add 3 black mana. If you're gonna get Shadrix Silverquill out on turn 3, this is how to do it. Next, we're running Duelist Heritage. Whenever one or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike till end of turn. Admittedly, this doesn't work with Shadrix since Shadrix already has double strike, but you can be doing this with one of your other creatures on the field. Next, we're running Moonlight Bargain. You get to look at the top 5 cards of your library, and for each card, you put that card into your graveyard unless you pay 2 life, and then you put the rest in your hand. This is a fun card. You get to either dip whatever the top 5 cards you have on the top of your library are, or you get to find your combo pieces and pay a little bit of life just to get them onto the field. And lastly, from our value, we're running Silverquill Command, where you get to choose 2. You get to either have target creature get +3/+3 and flying until end of turn. Return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Target player draws a card and loses a life, or target opponent sacrifices a creature. This is a fun card, basically giving you a lot of options. Either you to swing in for the kill, you get to return one of your smaller creatures to the field. You also get to draw a card, which this deck loves drawing cards if you haven't noticed. And an opponent can sacrifice a creature. So you can play this for a 4, go draw an extra card, and you can have your opponent sacrifice a creature while you get in with Shadrix damage. Now, we're running a lot of value, we're running a lot of draw and a lot of tutors, and especially with our combo, how do we protect ourselves from all of this? Well, we're running 5 cards that do so. The first of which is Ghostly Prison, where creatures can attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they're controlling that's attacking. This is a fun pillow fort card that a lot of people already know about in the community. A lot of people already know how to, or either already know or already playing this card, but it's really good to combat against really big armies where your opponent can't pay for every single one of the creatures attacking you, or just basically depletes them of their mana whenever they attack you. Next, we're running Malakir Rebirth. You get to choose target creature, you can lose 2 life. But until end of turn, that creature gains whenever this creature dies, you return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Basically, you get to keep Shadrix around if he ever gets targeted with a kill spell. And this also is a dual-faced card, where you get to flip it over for Malakir Mire, which gives you an extra black mana. Next, we're playing Professor's Warning. For 1 mana, 1 black mana, you get to choose either to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, or target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Mostly, we're going to be playing this for the indestructible ability. That way, whenever Shadrix gets targeted for a kill spell, you get to put indestructibility on him. Next, we're running Shadrix Shelter, where you get to have target creature gain protection from the color of your choice till end of turn, protecting them from any either kill, exile, or removal spell altogether. And it's another double-faced card where you get to flip it over for Shadrix Glacier, and that adds a white mana to your field. And lastly, we're running Selfless Squire. This is a really fun card that I've been wanting to find place in one of my brews. It is a pretty pricey card at currently $5, but for Flash, whenever it enters the battlefield, you prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this turn. And whenever damage would be dealt to you is prevented, you put that many +1/+1 counters on Selfless Squire. So effectively, you get to nullify anybody from swinging big at you. Playing Selfless Squire, you get to fog with the first ability, and however much damage was prevented, you get to put that many +1/+1 counters on Selfless Squire. So you're getting a double whammy with this card. What if your opponents are running a lot of creatures and you need to clear that field? Well, we have a couple of board wipes in here. With that, we're running Cleansing Nova, where you get to choose either to destroy all creatures or all artifacts and enchantments. This way you get to deplete your opponents of having any value either with artifacts, enchantments, or extra creatures. Next, we're running Kaya's Wrath, where you get to destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. Now, admittedly, you're not going to be getting a lot of life, mostly because you're going to have Shadrix on the field protecting you, getting your card draw, so you may gain 1 life, but you get to still deplete your opponents of having creatures altogether. Next, we're running Martial Coup, where you get to create X 1/1 white soldiers, and if X is 5 or more, you destroy all other creatures. So, if you want, you can sink all your mana into this one card just to deplete everybody from having creatures, and you have the biggest field. And lastly, we're playing Promise of Loyalty. This is another new one from Commander 2021, where each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and sacrifices the rest. Each of those creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control for as long as it has a vow counter on it. Everybody gets to choose a creature, and they sacrifice the rest, and for each creature that's still on the field, they can't attack. It's fun. It's like the GOAT ability almost. And this is just a really fun card to play. I'm trying to fit this deck in the rest of my white decks because this is pretty strong, even for a 5-mana white spell. Now, Shadrix has the ability to give your opponents Inklings, get them tokens. But what if you don't want that? What if you don't really want them to have tokens? Well, we have a couple of cards that hate on tokens specifically. So the first of which is Illness in the Ranks, where creature tokens gets -1/-1. So anytime you get to choose Shadrix's ability, you get to give somebody a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token. Now, the toughness is 1, so anytime it enters the battlefield, the Illness in the Ranks will already kill it. Next, we're running Kavrek the Spiteful. Other creatures get -1/-1. This is also effective with the Inkling tokens, and to boot, this is probably one of the worst commanders to play. However, if done right, and especially in a deck that hates on small creatures, this is just extra fun. Next, we're running Knights of Soul's Betrayal, where all creatures get -1/-1, and again, completely hating on your opponents. Even though Shadrix goes down by a little bit, being a 1/4 with this card, you're still effectively gonna hit in, gonna get those abilities off, and you get to draw extra cards. Next, we're running Pestilence. This is an oldie but a goodie, where you get to deal 1 damage to each creature and player for 1 black mana. So anytime your opponent's board is filling up with little 1/1s, or if they're filling up, you get to put Pestilence down, and you get to drain them of their creatures. Next, we're running Species Specialist, where whenever it comes into play, you choose a creature type, and when a creature of that chosen type dies, you may draw a card. So this out with any of the other 4 cards as per mentioned before, anytime they die, you get to draw a card. And if you're putting a bunch of Inklings down, or actually if you're giving Inklings to your opponents, they're going to be dying, you're going to be drawing cards, and you're going to be drawing an extra card off Shadrix. So 2 cards, 3 potentially each turn. And lastly, we're playing Virulent Plague, where creature tokens get -2/-2. So you're getting rid of your Inklings and any smaller creatures too. So even Knights, even Goblins, any kind of creature token that is 2 power or less, they effectively die to Virulent Plague. We already went through the half of the deck tech already. Half the deck is already there. Now we are going to the second part of how to win this game. So the second part is going equipment heavy. So we're running 8 equipments here, and the first of which is Bloodthirsty Blade, where equipped creature gets +2/+0 and is goated. And for 1, you get to attach the Bloodthirsty Blade to a target creature an opponent controls. Effectively, this can either go on Shadrix for an extra +2, or you could just go one of your opponent's bigger creatures, and they can't attack you. It's a win-win situation with the Bloodthirsty Blade. Next, we're running Chariot of Victory, where for 3, and equip 1, equipped creature gets First Strike, Trample, and Haste. The most important part here is the Haste. When we want Shadrix on the field, we want to give him Haste so we can start drawing cards immediately. The extra 2, the First Strike and the Trample. First Strike is pretty good. Trample is not completely necessary because it's smaller power. Nonetheless, it's a really strong card, especially for equip 1. That way Shadrix gets to get you to draw cards immediately. Next, we're running Fleet Feather Sandals, where for 2 and equip 2, equipped creature has Flying and Haste. Again, Haste is the most important part. Flying is kind of irrelevant since Shadrix already has Flying. Next is Hero's Blade. So for 2 and equip 4, and equipped creature gets +3/+2. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it. So anytime we're playing Shadrix and Hero's Blade is on the field, that's an extra +3/+2 that we can equip him with, so he becomes a 5/7 and attack, and with anything that gives him haste, we're attacking for 5 damage, drawing cards, yada yada yada. Next, we're running Loxodon Warhammer. If you haven't noticed, this is a fun little pet card I've been putting into most of my Voltron decks. This is a pseudo Voltron commander. This is a pseudo Voltron build, so we're putting this in the deck. Where for equip 3 and for 3 mana, the equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has trample and lifelink. The trample here is pretty good, especially with a +3/+0, but the important part here is the lifelink. We need lifelink, especially if we're drawing a lot of cards and losing a lot of life. Anytime we hit with Shadrix with the Warhammer, we're getting life back. That way we can draw more cards and keep getting more life to offset the life loss. Next, we're running Mask of Avacyn. For equip 3 and for 2, equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has hexproof. So we want to make sure Shadrix doesn't get targeted by our opponents, so we give him hexproof. And for a +1/+2, that's pretty good offset. The most important part is that hexproof, because we don't want Shadrix dying to anything, our opponents to target him, and this is a very budget alternative. Next, we're running Sword of Vengeance, where for equip 3 and for 3, equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has first strike, vigilance, trample, and haste. So again, the important part here is the haste, but with this, the trample for the +2/+0 is pretty good. We're also getting vigilance and first strike. Now, first strike is pretty strong when you're being blocked by one of your opponent's creatures. For the equip of 3 and having him on the field, you're giving him haste, you're giving him vigilance, you're giving him trample, and you're giving him first strike and +2/+0. So that's an extra 8 damage on your opponent that needs to be worried about. And the last equipment we're running here is Whisper Silk Cloak. So for equip 2 and for 3, equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. The important part here is the unblockable. And the Shroud is really strong too, but having him being unblockable, and if you're suiting him up for a lot of damage, you're gonna be killing somebody within a couple of turns, especially with that double strike damage. Next, we move on to our removal spells. This is where the fun begins, and this is where we get to interact with our opponents. First, we're running Crush Contraband, where for 3 and a white, you get to choose one or both. You get to either exile a target artifact or target enchantment, or you get to exile both. That way, you're getting rid of problematic enchantments and artifacts your opponents are running. If you can, you could double whammy this and remove an artifact and an enchantment on the board for 4 mana. Next, we're running D-Spark. If you haven't noticed already, this is just a pet card that I run. And for 2 mana, while white and a black, you get to exile target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. So anything that costs 4 or greater, you get to exile this with D-Spark and it doesn't come back. Next, we're running Generous Gift, which is the white Beast Within. However, you get to destroy a target permanent if controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. That way, anytime your opponent is going to attack you or anything to do with permanents in general, even if you're up against a Maze's End deck, you get to destroy it, and its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. Next, we're running a card that doesn't see a lot of play, but I find is a really fun little card. Next, we're running Massacre Girl. So this is a 4/4 for 3 and black, legendary human assassin with menace, where this creature can't be blocked unless it's 2 or more creatures. However, the ability is the most important part. When Massacre Girl enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn. And whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Especially with Shadrix having a high toughness, it's going to be hard for him to go down to Massacre Girl's ability. However, you're still going to be running rampant with those -1/-1 counters. You can completely deplete the board of any other creatures but Massacre Girl given the opportunity. Now, this is a really strong card, really strong removal, and it's a very budget alternative to a lot of other cards. Next, we're running Mortify, where it's a simple budget card for Orzhov, 1 and Orzhov, white and black, just for an instant destroy target creature or enchantment. It speaks for itself. You get to destroy either a problematic creature or a problematic enchantment your opponent is running. Next, we're running Murderous Cut. Now, with this one, you can effectively play this for 1 black. With the Delve ability, you get to exile cards from your graveyard to reduce the cost by 1, and you get to destroy target creature. And next we're running Tragic Slip, where target creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn, but the Morbid ability, that creature gets -13/-13 until end of turn instead if a creature died this turn. So you kind of want to make sure a creature dies this turn. That way you can completely just drain an opponent's big creature for all of its life. Next we're running Utter End, where for 2 white and black instant you get to exile target non-land permanent. Now this is also a really strong card. I don't have to go into too much detail as to why. You're exiling something instead of destroying it. That way it's harder for it to come back onto the field. And last for our removal is Virtue's Maneuver. For each player, choose a friend or foe. Each friend returns a creature card from their graveyard to their hand. Each foe sacrifices a creature they control. So I run Virtue's Maneuver in my Sarolf deck. Link at the top right of your video right now. And for each one of these, you get to return a creature card, or you get to have your opponent sacrifice a creature. Most of the time, you're choosing yourself as a friend, the rest as foes. So you get to return any creature you put into the graveyard or is in the graveyard before. So if you have Massacre Girl in your graveyard, you get to return it back and completely wipe the board again. Or if you have any other creature, you put them back at your hand. And now we have 2 extra cards I couldn't find a category for, so we're gonna put them here right now. The first is Head Games. So for this card, 3 black for a sorcery. Target opponent puts the cards from their hand on top of their library. Search that player's library for that many cards. The player puts those cards into their hand and shuffles their library. So you're effectively screwing over one of your opponents with this card. That way you can just completely shuffle the cards they have in their library and just choose a bunch of lands just to put in their hand, completely screwing them over. And the second one is Identity Crisis. This is just a card I run as a joke in all of the decks, or most decks I run black and white with. This is just a complete joke, especially with my playing group, where you get to play this and remove all cards from target player's hand and graveyard from the game. It's really good, especially against Reanimator decks, or decks that like to abuse their graveyards. But this is just a really strong card and just a really funny card altogether, especially with the high converted mana cost, or mana value as it's now called. It's just a really stupid card. I love it. I'm still putting it in this deck. Now, we have 2 last categories to go through. The first of which is our ramp. This is the rocks that'll get us to our victory. The first of which is Mind Stone. For 2 mana to play, you get to tap it and add a colorless, and for 1 and tap, you sacrifice Mind Stone to draw a card. You're getting your colorless, you're getting 1 mana closer to casting Shadrix, or any other card in your deck. Next we're running Orzhov Cluestone, where you get to add white or black, and for white and a black, tap and sacrifice the Cluestone, you get to draw a card. Next we're running Orzhov Locket. Same thing, except the sacrifice is for 4 in a combination of white or black, and sacrifice the locket to draw 2 cards instead. Then we're running Orzhov Signet. Basically, it's a staple in any deck that's running Orzhov. You get to pay 2 to play it, tap 1 and tap it to add your color combination. And next we're running Spectral Searchlight. So for this, you get to choose a player when you tap it, and that player adds 1 mana of any color they choose. And lastly, we're running Victory Chimes. So this one is the most expensive of our ramp, currently total at $2.66, but you get to untap Victory Chimes during each other player's untap step, and you get to tap it in as a player of your choice adds 1 colorless. It's a stupid little card that I found when playing against my friends, and I love it because it just makes you a little bit more political by giving extra mana around, and on each untap step, it untaps itself. And lastly, we're gonna go over our lands real quick. These are the most important part of the deck. This is the fuel to your engine. Let's get it started with Caves of Kolios, where you get to tap it and add an initial colorless, or you get to tap it and add either a white or a black, and it deals 1 damage to you. Then we're running the 3 most common cards in each one of my decks: Evolving Wild, Terramorphic Expanse, and Myriad Landscape. I am putting all 3 in the same category because they get to all search for basic lands and put them into the battlefield tapped, where Myriad Landscape, you have to tap 2 and tap and sacrifice it to put 2 basic lands that share a land type and put them onto the battlefield. I decided just to go through all 3 of them all at once. Next, we're running Study Hall. where you get to tap and add a color list, or tap 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. When you spend this mana to cast your commander, you get to scry X, where X is the number of times it's been cast from the command zone this game. And lastly, we're running 14 plains and 17 swamps. And that's how you build a giant scary dragon that's focused on combo. With our budget of 50 bucks, our deck totals out at 51.84, which is still in the green only because most people can expend an extra $1, $2 for this brew. It's not breaking the bank at all if it's an extra $2. If it's $5 or more, it breaks the bank. Nonetheless, anybody can expend $2 just to make this deck. It doesn't break your budget too much, and this is a fun commander to build around, especially with the combo in place. Now, if you want to add some extra cards to this deck, some more expensive cards like, let's just say, Demonic Tutor, Teferi's Protection, or even Sword of Feast or Famine, you're more than welcome to do so. This is just my deck tech for a $50 budget. And that's gonna do it for today's video. I just wanna know from you guys, did you enjoy this video, or were there any cards that I missed or may have not mentioned that are really good with this commander and this brew altogether? Please, if you have anything to suggest, leave it in the comments down below. Even if it's a suggestion for this video or a new Brewing 50 Bucks episode, please, I want to hear your voices. I post every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every video has premiere, so you'll be notified 30 minutes beforehand when the video goes live. And with that, we also have our social medias down below, our Twitter handle, our Instagram, and our Facebook. So go give them a like, go check them out. That's gonna be how you're gonna be notified outside of YouTube of every single video that comes out throughout the week. With that being said, thank you so much. I've been Stefan. I'll see you guys next Friday. Cheers, everybody.